Hello and welcome to the last of our specials on basic home security. Now, if you're thinking of installing an intruder alarm, you really need to watch this edition. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello there and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and looks at issues that matter to the older generation. Now, intruder alarms, a thorny subject for some people, and if you're thinking of putting an alarm into your house, there's a few things you need to consider. For a start, who's going to do it? Are you going to get a company in, or are you thinking of an electrician, or are you going to do it yourself? Something you need to consider. Are you going to have it wired or wire free? Is it going to be a monitored system or just ring at the house? How much is it going to cost? And are there any pitfalls to installing it yourself? We're going to look at all those in this edition of Grey Matters. So let's start with point number one. Who should install it? There's nothing wrong with self-installing alarms, and we will come on to self-installing in a moment. But if you're going to get a company in, who are you going to choose? Now, there's a couple of considerations. First of all, do you have a local friendly electrician who installs alarms? If so, I'm sorry, local friendly electricians, don't use them. They may be very good at the electrical side of it, but very few actually have the knowledge and where to place movement detectors properly, and also they can't have the systems monitored, not by the alarm receiving centres anyway. So if you're going to look at a professional intruder alarm company, you must really choose one that belongs to one of the regulatory bodies. That's the NSI, National Security Inspectorate, used to be called NACOS, or the SSAIB, the Security Systems Inspectorate Board. Now, these companies, if they belong to regulatory bodies, they must provide monitoring if you want it, they must be able to provide a 24-hour call out, and they must be able to provide maintenance for the alarm. And they are highly regulated, and they are the only ones that can provide monitoring. They have to be police approved, because a lot of companies out there will claim to be able to do monitoring, but all it does is send a 999 call to the police in an intrusion, and police control rooms will automatically hang up on a call if it comes in from an auto dialer, as they call it, that's dialed 999 because of an alarm, because there's no guarantee or proof it's a genuine alarm. Now, when properly qualified alarm companies install an alarm and they go for monitoring, they have to be able to provide a confirmed activation. And that can be done by each sensor sending a separate signal as it picks up movement around the house. And there are other ways as well. And once it's confirmed to the alarm company that it's a genuine or likely to be a genuine activation, those calls will go through to the police. Otherwise, the police spend a lot of time attending false alarms, and it is a complete waste of their time. They must provide monitoring, they must be able to provide maintenance, it must be maintained every year, and they must be able to be called out at any time to sort out your alarm problem. So that leads us to another issue. Do you go for a large national company, and I won't mention any names, but you probably know them, or do you go for a local independent? Let me tell you now, personally, I would always go for a local independent company. For a start, you're going to be able to get lots of local recommendations. You're going to be able to get a pretty quick response to an emergency call out, and they are a heck of a lot cheaper than the big nationals. National companies will tempt you with special offers, but quite often you never actually own the systems outright, and you are just paying through the nose forever and a day for a system that you could have bought and paid for in that time with another firm. Monitoring, big nationals will charge huge amounts of monitoring. For monitoring. A local company will charge a lot less. Usually they'll do a maintenance and monitoring contract together for £150 upwards per year, but not the huge sums that these large companies charge. Now, item number 2. Wired or wire-free? Now, a wired alarm system is generally cheaper because there's less technology involved, but it takes more to install. Now, bona fide companies are really adept at putting in wired systems in all sorts of properties, from grade 2 listed through to the very most modern properties. They don't make a mess, it's clean, you won't even know the wiring's there, because to install to the British standard it has to be hidden away. But most people these days go for wire-free. It's much easier to install, it's quicker to install, but it costs a little bit more. With the wire-free ones, you set up your control panel, you pair each device with the control panel, job done. It's cleaner and faster to install, but it's a matter of personal preference for you. There's less to go wrong generally with a wired system because it's just dealing with a direct connection and it's not having to worry about all sorts of different radio frequencies. And we will come on to the radio frequencies and things when we talk about DIY systems. Item number 3. Monitored or unmonitored? Now, a professionally monitored system will go through to an alarm receiving centre. As I mentioned, they will filter out the false calls and send the likely genuine ones to the police, who have a service delivery standard to attend within a certain time frame. The advantage to that is that the police are never going to be that far behind the burglars if you've had a genuine break-in. They can immediately knock on people's doors, they can say, did you hear or see anything? And you'd be surprised the number of times people will say, well, there was a van parked in the lay-by down the road, and they give a description. And, you know, they do catch burglars. There's something like 12% of burglaries are sorted through stop checks on vehicles. If you have an audible only system, it just rings at the house, and the police don't respond to those unless there's additional evidence to suggest there's a break-in. So if your neighbour rings up and says, look, my neighbour's alarm's been ringing for the last 10-15 minutes, the police will say, well, okay, we'll have a look, see if they've got a key holder listed, and we'll call the key holder. But that's all they'll do. They'll usually ask you to go and check the property. If you ring up and say my neighbour's alarm is going, they're away and the back door's wide open, then they are probably going to attend, because there is more to suggest there that it could be a genuine burglary. Item 4. How much is it going to cost? How long is a piece of string? It can cost anything from about £500 to £600 up to £2,000. It depends who you go with and how big a system you want. The average semi or 3-bedroomed house can easily get away with just 3 movement detectors, an outdoor siren and the control panel. And that will generally cost you £500–600. If it costs you more than that, then you want to get a few more quotes. Always get 3 quotes, because the companies do price differently, and you may find you like one company in particular, but you like the suggestions the other company's given you for the system, and you might be able to negotiate those. Most companies, the designs of the system will be fairly much in par with each other, because they all know what to look for, they all know the places where the burglars are most likely to break in, and they will protect those areas. But the more sensors you have, the more it's going to cost you. And I think it's about £100 per movement detector to provide and install each additional one. You always need one in the master bedroom. That's my view, because the master bedroom is always a target. Majority of burglars are opportunist. They come in for the cash and jewellery, and it's the master bedroom where they usually find the cash and jewellery. So always have one in there. Always have one covering the most likely entry points, and it's often useful to have one covering the hall, stairs and landing. And if you can afford one extra for luck, then do so, because there's always a chance one of the units might fail, and it's always handy to have a backup. So speak to the companies, get an idea for where they're suggesting they go, see which one you feel most comfortable with, and go with that company. Right, point number 5. Self-install. Yes, I've self-installed. It's not a problem at all. A lot of the systems are very easy to self-install, and I will show you one shortly called the PowerMax, and it's not a paid promotion by any means. Alarms come in 6 classes, and your average DIY alarm is going to be in class 3, and that's pretty poor as a class. Class 6 can only be installed by reputable, recognised companies, because they're the ones that will provide monitoring facilities. But class 5 is almost as good as class 6, but you can self-install it. And many of these systems have got lots of most of them have got fail-safes in. For a start, every component on the system will have a different radio frequency, and therefore if one item fails, the alarm system will cut that one out and leave the rest of the system working fine. Tend to work with the DIY systems on just one frequency, and that means if one item, one movement detector fails, it's going to keep false alarming unless it cuts out that frequency. Well, it can't do that because it's going to cut out the whole alarm, so it will just keep false alarming. It's always important to keep the integrity of your system complete. Cheap DIY systems from DIY stores and mail order catalogues, I would avoid them like the plague. And a burglar sees a well-known brand on an alarm box, he'll know it's going to be self-installed, and he knows it's not going to be that reliable. Now, a lot of these alarms, the cheap DIYs and the more expensive ones, will communicate, and you can get them to dial you or any number of phone numbers to report the fact the alarm has gone off. And with many of these systems, you can communicate with the alarm from your phone to reset it or turn it off. And with a lot of these communicating alarms, you can listen into the house, which is a really good way of confirming if it's a genuine activation. And you can often even talk to anybody that's there. The biggest problem with self-installing probably is that for you as a layperson, you won't know the best places to put the movement activated sensors. Bearing in mind most burglaries are attempted from the back, you need to protect the back of the house. Now, places like conservatories and kitchens can be quite hostile environments for movement detectors. A lot of hard surfaces, sunshine moving about and so on. So you will need a better class of movement detector. And when you go to choose your system, you need to speak to the supplier and tell them that you're intending to put a movement detector in a kitchen or in a conservatory, and ask them to recommend the best movement detector for that system that will work in that environment. If you have pets, you can get pet-friendly sensors. Most of these, the level of detection stops about 1 metre from the ground, so your pets can happily run around under that detection area and won't set the alarm off. But you don't want it looking up the stairs or facing the stairs, because as the animal goes up the stairs, it'll cross into that part where it's not protected. What we're going to do now is just have a look at some of the places where you should perhaps put your movement detectors, places you definitely shouldn't, at a do-it-yourself alarm system, and just sort of talk through some of the features of it so that you get an idea for what you can expect. So let's look at a typical 4-bedroom house, and where might we put movement detectors. This is the back of the house, this obviously the front. There's a side passage down there, and this side is adjoined to the neighbour, so it's a semi-detached. Now, the conservatory, you remember I said, hostile environment for a movement detector. What we would usually put in there would be a dual tech, that's a dual technology sensor that is capable of dealing with these harsh environments. But you could also back that up with contact on the door or vibration sensors on the windows. So you get an additional sort of belt and braces protection on the back there. Kitchens are the same, harsh environment, not very much in the way of soft furnishings and so on. So again, a dual tech movement sensor in there is worthwhile. But where would you put them? Well, obviously facing the entrance point. I would put a movement detector here because it will capture all this area here where anyone breaking in is going to head for. So that will help to capture that. In this kitchen here, I would have the movement detector either here or in the corner. Now it depends on these cupboards. If they are very high cupboards up to the ceiling, then you'd have to put your detector here really. And again, it's looking at that area where there is likely to be movement. Dining room is landlocked in this case, so probably no need for a movement detector in there at all. The front of the house, not so much a target. I think it would probably be fairly safe to leave that unprotected also. The lounge, however, there is access through from the French doors here into here, so it's worth putting a detector in here, particularly as you're likely to have your television and hi-fi equipment and things like that in there. In this case, I will put the movement detector in this corner so it's seeing the whole of the back here and should capture anyone coming in this way as well. Now the hall stairs and landing, you can usually deal with these with one detector. A lot of companies will try and sell you two. But here, we've got the stairs there. Remember I said master bedroom is always going to be a target. You could put a detector here, looking down the hall, protecting the front door and capturing the stairs. It would also capture if burglar bill came through here and came through here and came out there. It would capture them that way. You could put it at this end of the hall looking back, but I think you get much more an advantageous view from that end. Would you need one at the top of the stairs? Probably not. Let's look at the upstairs. And come up the stairs here. This is the master bedroom. So yes, definitely a movement detector in the master bedroom. There's a conservatory roof below the back windows, so it's unlikely they would come in that way. So you would have your detector looking down towards the door. You could have it, well, we've got wardrobes there. I think probably the best place would be in the middle of that wall there. It would cover all that area there. You could put it in that corner and it would cover that area. And then this back bedroom here, there's a flat roof from the kitchen, flat roof there, which is an access point, so definitely a movement detector in that corner looking back. Front bedroom, I wouldn't worry about. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 detectors in that particular scenario. Cost, if you're doing it yourself, then you're probably looking at about £400, £500. But let me show you the PowerMax, right? This isn't a paid promotion, but it's an alarm system that is a professional system. It's class 5 or class 6. Class 6 is for installation by professional installers. Class 5 you can install yourself if you wish. But let me just show you some of the features because it makes it so easy to use. Here's the PowerMax control panel, and the beauty about this little dear is that she speaks to you. With the front door closed, which it has to be, that's the final point of entry, that has to be closed, the alarm can be set. Now this is set on here to arm without needing a code to switch it on. It just says away, and I can arm that.
Arming away. Please exit now.
And then I can open this and I can exit. Turn it off, I press
Please
off,
enter code.
and then I enter the code.
Disarm. Ready to arm.
Now, she will also tell you if there's problems with the alarm system. She will tell you if there's a low battery. She will tell you if there's a fault on the system. She will phone you and she will tell you if there's a tamper on the system. If someone's tried to play around with the phone lines or tried to take one of the movement sensors down or tampered with the control box itself. And she will tell you if there's an alarm in the memory. If it's gone off and you've not responded, so you might come home, find that your alarm light out the front is flashing and you didn't realise the alarm had gone off. You come in and she'll say alarm in memory, and she'll tell you where the alarm went off, which of the sensors was activated. That's the kind of thing that you can get on the market, and is, you know, I love it because it takes a lot of the hassle out of setting alarms. You can have a key fob as well to set and unset it. It's just so easy to use, and I like that type of alarm for those reasons. And of course, it keeps you informed of what's going on. Well, I hope that's been useful to you. Alarms can be quite complex. It might have sounded a bit complex at times. I hope I explained myself properly. But if you've got any questions at all about intruder alarms, then please leave a comment below or direct message me, and I'll do what I can to answer your questions. If you've got any adverse experiences of alarms, let us know as well. Let's keep it real. Alarms aren't always the best thing since sliced bread, but I would just like to remind you that an alarm must be your last line of defence. If the rest of your security is not up to par, an alarm won't necessarily stop a burglar from breaking in. If the rest of your security is really good and you've got an alarm, that could be enough to just make them walk away, which is what you want. Thanks for joining us. I will see you next time on Grey Matters. Until then,